Alright, so you made it to the last section of a DVD. Woohoo! Just the editing part. We're gonna go in and edit an image. Same band, but different location. Unfortunately, we couldn't use any shots from that shoot, but this one's just from a few months earlier. So if you could open up img underscore 8870.cr2, that's a raw file. Just go ahead and open that up in Photoshop right here. Alright, so this is the image straight from camera. And just a little background on this image. Last minute shoot, rode with the guys up to the middle of nowhere, California. And I think our shoot time was about 10 minutes total. Behind the guys about, I don't know how far, where you can see these houses back here. There was like fans standing there watching and their bus was parked there. And we got out, did this shoot for about 10 minutes, went back in the bus and, we were done for the day. But pretty simple lighting. Same lighting as the stuff we covered in the shoot part. So just one big octabox to my top right, shot down at the guys to give that nice soft light over everybody here. And let's just quick over names just so you know who I'm referring to throughout this section. I've got Josh here in the top left, Jeremy in the middle, Alex to his left in this yellow shirt, Neil on the far left, our right, and then Kevin in this red Obey hat. So yeah, I'm going to go through my process step by step, and it's okay to stop and pause and try to catch up and everything like that, because I go pretty quickly, and if you're new to this, it might take you a few times to get the hang of this, 100 times or something, It takes a few years. So don't stress it, just slow down, take it in step by step, and we'll go from there. All the hotkeys I use are going to appear on the screen, and you should be able to see like something like space right now. Space, click to drag. And if I mash some buttons here, you can see just totally messed up my image. But, you could see that all those keys are appearing on your screen. And I do use a lot of hotkeys throughout the workflow, so pay attention to those because you might miss something otherwise. So our goal is to leave the raw editor with a rather flat image, and even with the lighting here, the image is pretty flat. Everything's pretty well lit. Nothing is too crazy. And no harsh shadows or highlights, with the exception of maybe right here's a little bright, and here's a little dark, and over here as well. But we're going to fix that up. So in almost every image I edit, I subtract the contrast by -25, and you can see that flattens it out even more. So that sort of just, brings down the contrast, exactly what it sounds like it does. And the temperature and tint, those are just personal preference, but for this image I went with 7500 and -64. Well, that definitely didn't work. Let's try that again. And -64. There we go. Bluish, kind of yellowish, and once we add the contrast to it, it'll look, a little less, it'll look better than that, but you get the idea. It won't look as hazy. So yeah, -25, and then for the exposure, just 0.15, and these aren't things I do on every one, with the exception of the contrast. This is just what I'm doing for this image, and I've already sort of figured out the numbers so it'll look nice. But yeah, exposure, bring it up a little bit. Recovery at 11, just to recover some of those highlights that might be a little blown out. Fill light 5, and again, that's going to fill in some of those shadows that might be a little too intense, so we can work with them a little bit more. Blacks 0, and that's going to even make it even more less contrasty. You can see right there. And we'll just leave the brightness at 50, contrast at -25, and we're not going to touch the clarity, vibrance, or saturation. Those are all things we'll deal with once we're actually in Photoshop, so don't worry about those. And the rest of these settings, we don't really need to touch either. That's all we're going to do in the raw editor. So after you've made your settings match mine, look at it right here, you can go ahead and open that image. And it should be right below, right down here. You can't exactly see it because my recording area isn't big enough, but I'm going to open the image. Alright, so now that you've opened up your image, you should be in Photoshop CS5. And if you are not in CS5 or you don't have it yet, for whatever reason, just go ahead and download the trial off of Adobe's website, or I think you can rent it now for like a month or something. So take advantage of that. And if you don't feel like downloading it, rethink it. I highly suggest you use CS5 for this tutorial because otherwise everything's not going to match up correctly. and that's no good. It makes it harder than it needs to be on yourself. Once you're in CS5, I also want you to make your palette match mine. You can do that real quick by just going to Window, Workspace, and you can just go to Essentials Default right here, and that should make it have the same palettes that I have open right here, or something similar. And yeah, it won't match mine perfectly, but it should keep you on the same page. So a little bit of a preview of what we're going to be doing here. This is my final edited image, and even if you don't like how it looks, at least you can get an idea of what we're going for, what we're going to do. The goal of this is to give you tools, give you options, give you strategies to use when you edit your image. You don't have to do it exactly like me, but at least you know what you can do, or at least it gives you new ways to do what you have already been doing. But at least you know what you can do, and at least it might give you some new techniques that you can put to use. So yeah, this is the final edited image. And I'm just going to go ahead here and turn off everything. And this is our original. So you can see final, original, final, original. And let's just go ahead and turn off all the other layers. Just do layer by layer here. I always save all my layers, so I can always go back and edit anything. But, you know, add them in one by one so you can see everything that is done to the image. A little bit of sharpening, a little bit of contrast, dodge. You can see how my layers are named as well, just so I know what each one of them does. Some of these adjustments you might not be able to see because they're so small, but when we go into it, it all makes sense. I just want to give you an idea of what I'm going to be doing here. And then lastly, some color adjustments. So yeah, before and after. Now I'm going to go ahead and close that. Do not need to save. And now we're back to this image. So our first step is to duplicate the background image, and you can use the hotkey for that, or you can go to Layer, Duplicate Layer, right here. Hotkey is a lot quicker. It'll speed up your work process so much. I highly suggest using it. But let's go ahead and name that spot, because we are going to be using that for spot editing. That's our first step, spot editing. And before we go any farther, just go ahead and save your image. And I'm naming mine after some numbers here because I have to name it. I have to increment throughout the tutorial so I can always come back and edit it. But name it whatever you want, you know, whatever makes sense for you. So maybe like first save or something, and you know, just so you have it saved. So if your computer crashes or anything closes, you don't lose all your information. Really good habit to get into. All right, once you have your image saved, go ahead and grab some of your spot editing tools. So we have, you know, spot healing brush, we have the clone stamp, and I'm gonna start off with the spot healing brush. It's my favorite. It's the easiest for like little specks of whatever you might not want. So you want to go through first and get rid of sensor dust and small distractions that may be bugging you throughout the photo. So let's just say you want to get rid of these little small spots in the ground of concrete that might make the ground look not so uniform. So we're just going to use this brush right here. And you go through and you just click what you want, and it automatically, you know, fills it in. Pretty straightforward. And yeah, click around. And you notice I'm just pressing space and then clicking to drag to move the window. And if you can't do that, it's probably because you're not in the right screen. And to change your screen mode, you just press F, and you can cycle through them there. And I like the one. You'll see this one. It'll sort of make your whole screen be gray, and then you'll have the image on the inside. And yeah, what it'll do is make it so you can scroll around your image like this. It's not bound to a box. You know, you have the whole screen, and I love it because you know I can do this. And so yeah, I'm going to go through and just click out stones, things like that, things I don't think will be uniform. And I'm using a pretty soft brush here, and you can either change the hardness and stuff like that up here, or you can use your hotkeys for it. And to change how big it is, you just press the brackets up and down, and change the softness or hardness, whatever you want to call it. You just press shift and do the same thing. And it goes up in increments of 25, so you either have 100, 75, 50, 25, and yeah. Pretty straightforward. I'll go back to getting rid of some of this stuff. And you'll notice if I want to zoom in, I also do that with a hotkey. It's just, there you go. Press Command plus, Command minus, zoom in and out. Super simple. Photoshop makes life easy. Easy on everyone. I think that's enough. We didn't do anything too crazy here. You can see a little before and after. Just got rid of some little specks, Nothing wild, but you get the idea. And let's say you want to get rid of some of the bags from, let's say, Josh and Kevin's eyes here. They're not big and they're not unnatural. I just feel like my lights sometimes make them look a little bit bigger than they actually are. So I'm going to go in, and I'm going to grab my tool right here. And you can either hold down here and select the patch tool, or if you press shift and then J, it'll cycle through all the tools. And that works for every tool. You can cycle through all of them like that. But what I'm going to do is just select it, drag, click to just draw around it like so. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to drag it down to his cheek to get some of that skin. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade it. And I got the hotkey for that right here. I'm just going to fade it to 50%. And that has to be your next step. So don't deselect, don't do anything, just fade right away. Otherwise you won't be able to do it. You can see then before and after, just fades it a tiny bit just so it's not as bright and crazy. My mouse jumped a little bit there. I'm not that bad at tracing. And yeah, to add to your selection, you can press shift and then, select, and to subtract, you just pressed option. Oops. Undo, you see the hotkey there. Just Command Z. And then click in it, drag. Perfect. And then I'm going to fade that as well. 50%. And I know I'm not saying all the hotkeys I'm using, I'm trying to, but some of them are such muscle memory that I don't even realize it. Hopefully after a while you get to that point as well. Or maybe you already are. I don't know. There we go. Perfect. Alright, so after you get rid of those bags, that's pretty much it for the spot editing on this image. Very, very straightforward. If you have a ton of sensor dust in the sky or something like that, it might take you a little while, or if you see anything else you want to edit out of this image, go for it. But this one's pretty clean and simple, so nothing too wild. So next, let's say you don't want the power lines in the shot. Maybe you do, but for the purpose of this tutorial, let's pretend you don't. And if you like them in, you can decide to keep them in. I don't even know yet till I see it. So our first step to get rid of something this large is we can't really go in and just patch it like we did with everything else, because it touches their heads and touches the edge of the image, and it'll look really sloppy. So our first step is to separate it. And the way you separate it is you go in with your stamp tool, and everywhere where the power lines meet something else in the image, you make like a little separator. I don't know how to explain it. I'll show you. So power lines meet on Alex's hat. Let's take some of his hat here, sample it, copy on over. Oh. Yeah, so you can see I'm changing the flow and opacity up top there. If you want to change the opacity, you just press numbers. You can mash numbers, see it's all changing. 1 will give you 10, 2 will give you 20, and then 1, 2 will give you 12 if you press them quick. And same goes for flow, you just hold down shift ahead of time. Then it'll save you tons of time, so use that. But yeah, 100% for everything, so you want to copy 100%. You don't need a lot of space, but at the same time, you don't need a little. You need just a little. You need a good amount. Something like that'll do. Enough to draw a line in there. Just over here also. Doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody will notice. It's so small. Be realistic here. And yeah, my brush is about at 25% hardness, just in case you want to know. And remember, you can change that with the bracket keys, hardness and the size. So go ahead and toy around with that if your brush is too hard or too soft. Good. Now for Neil's head. Ooh, a little trickier. Remember, nobody's going to notice. It's really small. You could do stuff like this. And if it looks bad in the end, you can always come back in and add some more hair to him or something. This just looks bad. I'm happy for getting rid of this because it looks like he has a growth coming out of his head. And nobody needs growths coming out of their head. It's already got him out of his ears. And if you're ever worried that it's looking funny or looking off, you can always do a little before and after to check it out to make sure you're on the right track. So, just unclick that eye. I don't look bad at all. Got rid of some of his hair, but nothing substantial. Cool. Good. And that should pretty much do it. Alright, so now you want to get your polygonal lasso tool. And you could do that by... Well, I thought it was L. Yeah, L. Yeah, press L. And then I'm just going to draw a selection in between this. So let's start off with getting rid of this one. And if you double click, it'll automatically connect your first and last point. Then grab your patch tool, drag that into another uniform area like so. And you can see that worked really well. Before, after. Pretty simple. Now we're going to do the same for the rest of this. And you can see why I made those little separations now so that you don't have to accidentally select their skin and then it'll blur their skin in with the sky and they'll look like they're half, I don't even know, some kind of melting superhero thing. So there we go. Got that selection and then grab the patch again and just drag it into something uniform like so. Perfect. Actually looks pretty good. I think there's a little bit that needs to be cleaned up right here. You could see that it's looks a little smudged. So just grab it, drag it again. And if you ever see anything acting up, might be a little right here, you just use this tool. You don't even have to get the lasso tool. You can actually trace with the patch tool. Cool. So that's our after. So before, very simple. And I'm actually seeing like a blob right there that I want to correct too. Where did that blob go? Somewhere like right here. I could barely see it, but I feel like it might show up later. Alright, that looks good. Perfect. And that's actually going to do it for spot editing. You can see a little before and after here if you just, click your eye on and off. And if you have, images with more spot editing, it might take you a little bit longer, but it's alright to keep it all on the same layer. You can always go in and mask it out if you do something a little bit too much or need to fade it a little bit. So, yeah, go ahead and save. Remember, get in the habit of saving. I'm just going to save mine. And after you're done saving, we're going to move on to my least favorite step, which is called picking apart your image. And it's not fun, but it's totally necessary. So, yeah, that's our next step. Alright, after blinking a few times, I still feel like there's a little bit of something above Alex's head. So I'm just going to patch it again. And hopefully that takes care of it. Sometimes you got to look at an image a few times before you notice things. Because your eyes, you just got to blink a few times. And yeah, that looks good. Alright, least favorite part ever. Separating my image. And let me just explain my theory, or whatever you want to call it, behind this a little bit before. Basically, what we're going to do is break our image down into different groups so that we can process each section differently. And you want to get used to that. Think of each part differently. So, for example, you have your sky here, and it's pretty basic tonal adjustments. Nothing too crazy on it. No details, just blue to white, a little bit of yellow in here. Nothing crazy. So we could add a lot of contrast to that, and it would still look good. However, if we added that same contrast to their face, they'd probably look like something out of a horror movie. Nothing fun, and we don't want that to happen. And vice versa for sharpening. Like, you might want to sharpen their face a little bit, make it a little more crisp, a little more easy to see. But if you sharpen the sky, it's not really going to do anything other than add unwanted noise or something of the sort. So it goes both ways. The trick is, at the end, we want it to look like one uniform image. We don't want it to look like our sky was processed on a totally different level than the guys. We want it to look like one, image that goes together really nicely, and people look at it and say, hey, that's a cool image. How'd they do that? Not, hey, that's a cool image. Why does it look like crap? Just keep it good and uniform. And don't slack on your selections. This is a very important part to get right. So for this example, we're going to select the sky because that's pretty much the easiest one. And for time purposes, I'm not going to show you how to select everything, but you can use the exact same technique to select each one. So yeah, just get your, you want to get over here and use your quick selection tool. The magic wand tool isn't all that magical. It actually sort of sucks. I don't like it at all. So I use the quick selection tool and definitely have auto enhance on. And then what you're going to want to do is just click and drag on the area you want to select. So something like that. And you can see it actually did a pretty good job from the get-go. There's a little bit on here where it cut into his face and stuff, but we'll fix that in a second. And select up here. And then we'll select right there as well. I'm just getting everything that I want selected first, not worrying about areas it's messing up on, just to get that basic start. Cool. Perfect. And you can see that in some of these brighter areas, it mistook it for the sky. And it's not perfect, but it's definitely a lot easier than going in and hand drawing this. So what you can do then is use your hotkey option, hold it down, or Alt if you're on a PC, and then just click. And it should work out pretty well. And if you're getting some weird results, just make sure to check your brush and it's the right hardness and size that makes sense, Obviously, you don't want to be working with a brush this size. Or, that's actually a good size. This size when you're doing something that big. Same goes, you don't want a huge brush either. It wouldn't really make sense. So just keep it nice, moderate hardness, maybe like 50% or something. And yeah. So I'm going in, just editing up this. Perfect. You want to do your best to trace it with your edge, because it'll edge of your brush, because it'll detect that and it'll make it nice. And that enhance, you can see when it thinks for a second there, that's it doing its little auto enhance gig. Perfect. Oh, I love you, Photoshop. And if you're having trouble in some of the small areas, feel free to use your lasso tools, other selection tools. You don't have to just use this. They all go together if you're doing selections. I just like this one the most. But yeah, just keep selecting, keep separating. And then, I know the selection is not perfect right now, but I don't want to waste the time just showing you how to do something that you just develop over time. And it's just one of those tedious things that, there's no right or wrong way. It just takes time. So, what I'm going to do is show you how to save a selection. After you get your selection perfect, you want to go to Select, and then Save Selection right here. And name it something that makes sense. So for this, Sky. And then your dialog box should match this one. So New Channel, Channel New, Document. Your document might be named something differently, but that's okay. Then press OK. Go ahead and deselect that. And then what you could do is go look at your channels, and you'll see that you have this new selection right here, which is actually what we just made. And you can go back there now, and if you hold down Command and click it, it'll bring up that selection again for you. Pretty sweet. So I actually ended up separating this image into 7 different groups. I did the right wall over here, left wall, background walls, which is all the stuff back here, the ground, everything on the ground down here, tires, and then subjects. And the subjects are just the people. And so what you could do actually is open up that PSD I gave you. So I'm just going to do it. I already have it opened up here. And then what you want to do is take each one of its channels from its channel palette over here and drag them in one at a time. So I'm going to delete my sky one. Just drag it down here. Go back to this document. I'm going to drag the sky in. Awesome. And this is a lot easier than you having to select them all on your own. Drag that in. Background walls. Right wall. Ground. And you can see the white parts of the selection. Tires. Subjects. And then you do not need to drag the red copy in. That's from a later step that's already on the PSD. Don't worry, don't drag that in. You'll just confuse yourself. And then you can actually close that. We don't need it anymore. Now that we have all the channels in here, just go ahead and click your eyeball back on the RGB and make sure everything else is unclicked. So it's showing that red right now because this is still clicked. But just unclick that. Perfect. Alright, so now we have all the different masks here. How you can use these masks now is basically throughout the rest of your editing process, you can use them as quick ways to select different areas you want to edit. So if you hold down Command and click on one, it's going to load that selection like we went over. So I could do it for each one of them. Command click, Command click, Command click. And if you hold down Shift and do that, it's going to add that to your selection. So Shift, Command click. And you can see that I'm just selecting everything now. So yeah, add them together. Make sure you're clicking on the thumbnail part here that shows a little thing. And then if you hold down Alt on a PC, Option on a Mac, and then press Command, and then click it, it's going to subtract it. So it goes both ways. And you can actually edit the selection within this area by just clicking on the mask and using your brush tool, set to black and white. Just press D if you want to get to the default colors. And then you can paint through. Mine's opacity's at 100. You could just paint like this. And then when you go back and view the selection here, you can see it's changed. So you see it added that to it. So white is your selection, black's you're not selected. And yeah. If you get lost and you're not quite sure what channel you have selected, it'll actually show it on the top of your document right here. See how it says spot ground? So it means I'm on the spot layer and I have the ground channel selected. And you can also view let me just go back in time here. So now that we have all these layers here, we are good to go and move on for editing the rest of the document. And if you don't do this step, it's going to make your life a lot more difficult later in the editing process. So do yourself a favor and take the extra hour or so to make these selections so that when you actually get into the image, everything looks good, crisp, and clean, and nothing looks pretty sketchy and, off and slappy. All right, so save your image before we move on, and then we'll be good to go. So this next section I like to call mask light, and it's just basically a time to brighten up any areas that might be too dark so that they match the rest of the image. Keep in mind we're just laying the foundation for a later step, so none of this is permanent or supposed to look good yet. It's just to help build the image. So we're just building it up. So bear with me here. I know it's not going to look too great yet. Our first step is to add a curves adjustment layer, and you can do that right here. Just click curves. And then grab it about 60% of the way up and drag it something like that. I know it's pretty bright right now, but we'll fix it up and name it left wall because that's what we're going to use it for. Just double click on it, type it in, and then go to your channels palette. And I want you to hold down Command and click on left walls, like black and white icon, so you get that selection. Then go back to your layers and click on the layer mask for left wall. Now I want to make sure that your curves matches mine perfectly, so go ahead and click on that point right there. And you can see now it's going to bring up these output and input boxes right here. Move this up so you can see it. There you go. And what you want to do is enter 178 into the first one and 122 into the second so that ours match perfectly. Now that you have that set perfect, go ahead and click on the layer mask right here. You should get these bracket around it. Then I want you to press the letter D. And what that's going to do is going to set your palette to its default colors. So that's white in the foreground, black in the background. And then I want you to hold down Command and press Delete. And you can see that filled the whole area with our background color. And you can see it on the mask as well. So that's not being affected by the curves layer adjustment. And that's actually the exact opposite of what we want to do. So first thing you need to do is deselect your selection. You can do that by pressing Command D. And then make sure you click on your mask again and then press Command I. And that'll invert it. So you can see now, if I press the backslash key, you can see the red is everywhere that's not being affected or is being masked out by that mask. And then the white is everything that's showing through. So that's just being lit up right here. Now if it's too bright in some areas, all you have to do is grab your brush, so press B, and then set it to black. You can press X just to swap your colors. It's pretty simple. X, 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 X. And then I'm going to make my brush a little bit bigger, a bit softer. And I'm just going to paint away some areas that I don't like. I'm going to probably put it at 33%. So I just don't want it super bright on the edges here. There we go. And you can see now it's a little redder in some areas, and that's because I, masked out some of it, so it's not as bright. And if you want to do a more uniform adjustment, all you have to do is change the opacity of a layer. So if you bring it down all the way, nothing will happen. All the way up, everything will happen, and anything in between will be, that much percentage of it. Pretty straightforward. Now this layer, sometimes when you adjust the brightness of colors, they get a little brighter and more vibrant. So a good thing to do is to add another adjustment layer to that. You can do that by pressing this arrow down here and then adding a vibrance layer. And then what you want to do is hold down Option and click on the line right between here. And that's going to clip this one to that. Or you can click this icon right here. Either or. And what the clipping does is it makes it so this layer up here is only going to affect the layer beneath it. So I'm going to bring the vibrance down a little bit. And you can see now that wall isn't as bright as it was before. So pretty quick adjustment. I just didn't want it too bright. And that's actually a little too much. Let's just do it at like -10 or 15. Yeah, that's cool. Just a little bit to, so it's not bright and, oh, what's that bright red wall distracting us from the subjects. If you see any other areas that you think need a lot of brightening, feel free to repeat the step and do it anywhere else. But for the most part, I think that the image looks pretty good as it is now. As long as the adjustments are minimal, if you want to just click right on this layer mask and go in with your white brush and just paint out some areas that are too dark, that's fine. So I'm just going to set it at like 10%, and I have a white brush, pretty soft. And then I'm going to go in and I think I'm going to paint out some of this tire area right here. And you know what? I just want to get the tires, so you can actually go back into your channels and you could find the tires. Hold down Command, click on it, then go back into your layers. Make sure you have the walls. Make sure you have the left wall layer mask selected. Zoom in here so you can see it. Then I'm just going to go in and I'm going to paint it so that it brightens up a little bit. And if we didn't have these masks, you know, you'd be brightening up some other stuff that you don't necessarily want to brighten up. So they just make life a lot easier on you. Maybe this doesn't look good to you. Maybe it does. You don't have to do it. But I like to get rid of a lot of shadows and have a little bit of detail show through when we edit it. And yeah, make sure you're using a soft brush because you don't want it to look like this. Boom. You don't want somebody to be like, oh, what's going on there? You just want it to be a nice, soft, you know, medium, like very, very minimal adjustment. And you can always go back with that black brush, you know, and paint away if it's too much. You know, just play back and forth. The masks are awesome. All right, that should pretty much do it for the mask light. So go ahead and deselect whatever you're on or whenever you're done with it. And then let's group all this together. So click your topmost layer and then click everything down to spot. So just these 3 layers right here. And then I'm going to press Command G, and that's going to group them together. Then double click on the group and rename it something that makes sense. So I'm going to name mine Spotlightin'. And what that does is just keeps our layers a little bit more clean, you know. Now we have everything grouped together because we don't need to see all those all the time, and it'll just keep our palette a little more organized. And when we come back, you know, when we have 20 layers or so, it'll only be 4 groups, so it's a little easier on your eyes. And after we're done, don't forget, go ahead and save now. We're done with the next step, so good stopping point to save and get in the habit of that. Alright, so now we're going to get into the fun stuff, and when I say fun, I guess I mean we're going to start adding contrast to this image. This is basically as flat as the image is going to get, and yeah, after you do this a few times, you'll start to realize and notice what I really mean by flat and how to get your images to that point. But right now, our image looks terrible, and that's okay because it's a good template. It's a good place to start. It's a good open palette for us to work on. Anyway, this next section is called deep tones, and our first step is to merge everything onto a new layer, and you basically do that by mashing a bunch of keys together. You want to hold Shift, Option, Command, E. And you can press them in that order. And then if you do it correctly, you can see that it just made a new layer on top of everything that is basically everything below it merged together onto a new layer. And then double click that and rename it Malt Base. For these next 20 steps, nothing is going to make sense while we're doing it, but it'll look really cool in the end. So just go with me for the next few, and bear with me, and it'll all come together. Now I want you to duplicate that malt base layer, and name this one Multiply. Then I want you to set this one's blend mode to multiply. So there's a few ways to that. You can either go to this pull-down menu right above the multiply layer and choose multiply. Or you can click on this layer, make sure you have your move tool selected. The hotkey for that is V, so just press the letter V. And then you press Shift, Option, M. And you can see that just changed it to a multiply layer. And that looks terrible, but like I said, just bear with me. Now I want you to add 3 adjustment layers. Curves, go back. Vibrance, go back. Hue and saturation. And then clip all of those to multiply layer. So if you remember, you hold down Option, Alt on a PC, and then you click the little lines in between, and that's going to clip all those to this multiply layer. Then I want you to click on this malt base layer and add a curves layer to that one, and clip it. Then I want you to select all of them, and you do that by clicking the bottommost layer, malt base, and then shift clicking the topmost layer, and then pressing Command G to group them all together. And name that group Deep Tones. Awesome. Now fly it open. So press this little arrow right here. And now from the bottom up, let's make some adjustments here. So click on your curves layer. And the goal for this layer is to brighten the midtones in the photo. So grab about right here and drag something like that. That's not perfect. Enter the numbers 195 and then 120. And that should do it. Yeah, that's good. Just so we match perfectly on this for learning's sake. And then go up to your other curves layer and click up here in the top left and just place it point right there. And then enter 239 and 209. And just to clear it up, you don't have to have these exact numbers for every photo you edit. These are just for this one and what works and what matches my final product. But for the other photos, do something that works around here. So this one's main goal is to brighten the highlights and add a little bit of contrast. And this one's goal is to brighten the midtones up a little bit. So this one's going to be a little bit more towards the middle. And this one's a little more towards the top. And we're actually not done with that curves layer just yet. But alright, so we're coming together a little bit here. But we're losing a lot of our shadows. You can see right here, everything's pretty dark. So select your multiply layer. And then go to Image, Adjustments, Shadow Highlights. And set the shadows to 50%. And just leave the highlights be. Now that looks pretty bad, but what you're going to do is you're going to fade it. So if you remember, you do Shift Command F. And let's fade it to like 30% maybe. Let's see. Let's try 50%. That's a little much. Let's do 40. Something in the middle. Perfect. That looks good. Press OK. There we go. See a little before and after there. That was before. That was after. So you could see it brought some of those darker areas out and made them a little bit brighter. Now you want to go back to that other curves layer and add a little bit of contrast in there. So I know we just brought those shadows up, but let's bring them back down and at a point right here or so. And the exact numbers should be 16 and 16. Good. All right. Now we have good contrast, but what happened is because we made all these adjustments like we did on the wall, it added a lot of saturation to it. And you can see how everybody looks pretty red and pretty ridiculous. So what you want to do is play with the vibrance and hue and saturation until you get something you like. You can adjust both the saturation and the vibrance in the vibrance layer, but I like to play with the opacities of each layer, so I add both of them so I can, play with both things. But just decrease it a little bit. If you want something a little darker looking, you might do something like that. But I still want this to be pretty bright. Something right there. You can always paint on these masks. You can always use these masks right here. Just make sure you select them, use your brush, paint anything out that's too bright or needs to be brighter in this case because you're decreasing it. And you can quickly change opacity in any of these layers just by pressing V, so you have the move tool, and then pressing numbers. So like we did with the brush to change opacities when we had that tool selected, same thing with the layers. You just mash numbers. So you can see it changing like crazy. And 0, 0 does 100%. Alright, so the last step is to go back and recover any highlights that you may have blown out. So if you see here on this curved layer, you can see that this layer really brightens a lot of things up. I would pay attention to Neil's shirt, for example, here. You can see how it's getting pretty bright, and it's losing a lot of its detail. And same with Kevin's shirt and this right wall over here, and maybe a little bit of the sky. So now you can use those channels we made before. Let's start with the subjects. We'll select that. Go back to layers, click on the mask for curves, get our brush out, get a black brush, and set the opacity at 22%, soft brush, and paint around. We don't have to worry about getting anything in the background because we're not going to. You can go in and be more precise, but it's not too important in this. As long as you're using a soft brush and at a low opacity, it's not going to really make a difference. Nobody's going to notice. Cool. And now you can see it doesn't brighten those as much. Flip it on and off, take a look, get a feel. What looks good to you? Just switch it up. And then let's try a different one. Deselect that, and let's do the right wall. So we got that right here. And I actually want to get rid of it a lot on this wall, so maybe bump the opacity up a lot more. So I like the texture of this wall. There we go. Perfect. There we go. And you see now it didn't really affect that at all. And then a little bit more on the left wall. Let's do that. Up top a little bit. And I think that's pretty much it. Looks good to me. So yeah, deep tones are our first step that adds like permanent, saturation. And you can really see what it did here if we just collapse that layer down and click it on and off. You can see it really saturated everything, made it a lot nicer, a lot more rich. And yeah, it looks good. Actually, there's one more thing looking back on this that I want to go in and make a little darker. Let's make Kevin's hat a little darker. So, subjects, not darker, just not as bright. Whoa, come here, Kevin. There we go. Perfect. It's a pretty bright hat, so I just want to, tone it down a little bit. And that should do it. Cool. All right, yeah, that should do it. So like I said, deep tones basically saturates the image really, I feel like it gives it some deep tones. So that's what I call it. Before and after here. And we've come a long way so far. After you're done with that, go ahead and merge everything onto a new layer again. Just make sure you're selecting the topmost layer, or topmost group in this case, which is deep tones. Merge it onto a new layer, and save. Alright, before we get into this next section, I want to talk to you about actions. And actions are a thing in Photoshop which basically automate steps. And when you have something like deep tones that we just did, that the first 20 steps of it are always going to be the same, it's a good idea to just automate that and speed up your workflow. So keep in mind that everything I'm teaching you, for the most part, can be thrown into an action. And just quick Google search, make an action, and it'll tell you exactly how to do it. It's really helpful, really simple. I highly suggest doing it. It'll save you tons of time in the long run. But anyway, so select your top layer here, and let's change its blend mode to soft light. Again, you can either choose it from the fly down menu here, or you can do Shift Option F, I believe. Yeah, for soft light. The hotkeys for all these blend modes are really weird, so it takes a little bit to get a hold of them, like F for soft light instead of S. So it just takes a little while. I don't even know them all. And then subtract 100 saturation from this. So hotkey is Command U, and just 100. And then apply shadows and highlights. So you go Image, Adjustments, Shadows, Highlights, and put this at 50%. Press OK. Then go to Filter, Other, High Pass. And you want to set this at 50 pixels. Mine's already at it, but you might have to change it right here to 50. Then press OK. Add a layer mask to that layer and rename this Thick Sharpen. Now basically what Thick Sharpen does is it boldens all your thick lines in the image. So things like his pants right here, arms, just big bold lines. So if I turn it on and off here, you can see something like that. Now 100% is a little much for me, so I usually turn it down to about 50%. And then in addition to that, you want to mask out areas that have high contrast to them, because you want to avoid a thing called haloing. What happens with haloing is basically you're sharpening an area with with a big change in tones. So you're going from a shadow to a highlight right here. And what you want to do is go back to channels, get the sky, go to your layer mask, and just delete that away. So you don't even have to worry about it. You can't see it in this image very well, but in some of them you'll definitely be able to see it. You can sort of see it happening on the ground here. I don't know if you can see, but the edge right here is a lot more bold. If you turn it on and off, you can see how it's making it really bold right there. And that doesn't look too great. So I prefer to usually get rid of it. And although it may not be very like prominent right now, when you edit it more and add more contrast to the image, it'll definitely show through. So it's good to be careful on these things. And especially if you're editing an image on a backdrop, you'll really notice it. And at least you'll know to look out for it. But you don't want evidence of your editing. You want to keep it so people don't know what you did. You want them to just look at the image and say, that's a really nice image. What the hell did they do to it? All right, that looks good. In addition to that, I usually mask out faces for the most part, especially when they're this small, because what it does is I think it destroys how delicate their faces are. So you can see this is the before, this is the after, and to me it's just boldening up areas that they're just too bold for me. I'm not sure how to explain it, but I usually get rid of it. So, on his eyes, dark brush, or soft brush rather, set at 100%, because I get rid of all of it. There we go. And again, not worrying about the selection on this one because it's just going onto the background, so it's not a big deal. Cool. I'm going to get rid of it down here. I don't need it there. You can paint it off, get rid of it wherever you want. The beauty of a layer mask, it's very, very easy to switch around and manipulate the photo. So yeah, that's what Thick Sharpen does, and that's really big image popper. It really makes the image come out. And depending on how intense you want it, you can turn the opacity up and down and mess around with that. But for me, that works, and it's a pretty good setting for me. If there's anything popping out that you don't want to pop out, like maybe you don't want the background to pop as much, you can also just paint that out. Something like that. And yeah, pretty straightforward, pretty easy step. And that's all for the Thick Sharpen. So go ahead and save your image, and then merge everything onto a new layer again. So that's Shift, Command, Option, E. Alright, so you can go ahead and name this new layer Dodge. Let's double click on it. D-O-D-G-E. And what we're going to be doing is dodging. And dodging is basically a way of brightening stuff manually. And grab your dodge tool, which is right here. And you can either get it by pressing O, Shift O to switch to it, or just click on it. And start with a brush, it's about 125 or so. And you want the range to be midtones. And Shift Option M just switches that to midtones for you. And put the exposure at about 10% or so. You want to definitely start low and work your way up. As you get the hang of it, you could do more and more, but 10% or even lower is probably a good idea to start with. And before we go, change your blend mode to luminosity as well. And I just did it with hotkeys, so it's you could do that or you can select it. And now you want to go in and dodge anything that's a midtone that you want a little bit brighter. So, for example, Alex's pants right here maybe. You can see just brighten them up a tiny bit, just so they show through a little bit more. Kevin's leg, maybe. It's pretty dark here. I don't know if it's really worth it, but you can try. Maybe Josh's leg a little bit as well. It's too much. Let's bring it down to 4%. Good. And you can use the selections in this too. Should probably be using them right now. But it's not too bad when you're using small amounts. If I'm dodging it like a bigger percentage where it'll also affect the background, I probably definitely should. But for what I'm doing right now, it's not too big of a deal. Kevin's arm too here a little bit. And you can't even tell I'm making the adjustments right now because they're so small. But, I mean, it's brightening up a tiny bit. And then after you get all your midtones done, usually I don't dodge too many midtones. You want to move to your highlights. But you can change that by doing a Shift Option H, Alt on a PC. And then for highlights, you want to brighten anything you want brighter. Tattoos, for sure, you can make them pop. And I'm definitely going to use selections for this. Let's start with subjects. And probably do 10%. Just draw through here. There you go. Oh, there. Perfect. It's okay if it's a little bright. We're still gonna go in and burn everything, which I'll explain to you in a little bit, but trust me on this one. You want to try to dodge in areas that make sense, you know, down the middle of the pants, down the middle of the leg, so you get that nice round light that helps them pop a little bit more. You know, don't go like this. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Just do like a nice line, like, you know, you can even make the sound effect if you want to, if it helps you get into the moment a little bit more. Haha. Cool. Josh's hair, maybe. So you really want to make this believable. Don't overexpose it. And, you know, just do it gradual, slowly. You work with the light, you know, you don't want to make your own stuff up too much. Sometimes you can just do like one click. So let's set it at 20% and just click once on Jeremy's face. You can see that brightened him up a good amount. And it's not overexposed. And if it is, you can go back in with a mask and mask it out. Or you can fade it. There's plenty of options, you know, don't sweat if it's not looking right off the bat. And this and burning, which we'll do next, are probably the hardest things to get a hang of because it's so much eyeing, you know, not anything is set in stone. It's all a personal preference. So it just takes a while to get it right. At least for me it did. We'll do some on the tires here. And you see I bumped it up a lot more for these because they're pretty dark and I'm not worried about them overexposing. And I'm going to go back in and burn them anyway. So I know it looks pretty bright right now, but you'll see once you burn it how it sort of makes it all nice. Hold down shift and click, it makes like a straight line. Too bright. Let's try that again. There we go. Cool. That looks pretty good. Pretty much set on that. And I know those tires are looking pretty crusty right now, but like I said, once you get into the burning and stuff, it'll make it look nice and deep and saturated. Let's go ahead and get that back wall a little bit brighter. So select that. You can dodge the heck out of these. Here we go. That's a little too much. No, come back. There we go. Let's try 20%. And you can just click over here and then click over here to just dodge the whole thing, you know, brighten it all up, and then go back in and play around with it. Awesome. And I know I told you to set it to luminosity, and if you don't know what that does, basically it knocks out all the color messing up it would do. So just switch this to normal for you. And you can see like in the background here, if I would have left it on, you can see how it's making this wall more saturated. Like this is it with luminosity and this is it without. Which cool if you're going for that effect, that's awesome. But if you're not and you want to be able to apply that on your own, then I usually set it to luminosity just to be safe. After you're done, go ahead and add a layer mask and go back through and paint anything off that you think might be too bright. So we like this area right here. Make sure, I mean, you're gonna need a black brush for that. Whoop, that is definitely not what I wanted to do. What did I do here? Moved it. There we go. Awesome. Yeah, go back in. You can get rid of anything that might be too bright. Everything looks pretty good. His face might be a little too much. There we go. Cool, cool. That's enough for me. Alright, so a little before and after for you here. This is before, after. You can see we're just brightening everything up a little bit. Nothing too wild. And if you take it little by little, it shouldn't be too difficult. So yeah, maybe I want to bring this down a little bit more. There we go. Cool. So after you're done with that, go ahead and merge onto a new layer. Gotten a hang of that by now, hopefully. And then you can name this one Burn. Burn. And for this one, we're going to do the opposite, basically darken the shadows, which is really fun. I like this the most because this is when everything really comes together. And just go in and let's start with the tires here. I'm just going to make everything nice and dark and burned. And that's way too dark. We'll try something a little bit, not so much. That's still too dark. And I'm actually going to go like that. Perfect. You can see how they're all nice and saturated now, but they still have those highlights showing through. But they don't look as crusty, you know? It looks just nice and dark and deep. So yeah, just go over areas that could be a little more rich, a little more saturated. And again, keep in mind, same as last time, work with the light. Don't make stuff up all the time. Just do what looks good. And you can always go back in with that mask and adjust it. Tattoos, pants, anything that just looks like faded you want to hit. Like his shirt looks awful. That's my fault because I brightened it up too much, but gotta darken that right back down. There we go. And if you don't set this to luminosity, it's going to make your colors bounce a little bit more. It's not as bad as the highlights, so I actually sometimes keep it on normal. But for the most part, I switch it to luminosity. It really just depends on what you want it to look like. You could just try it back and forth afterwards. The ground in buildings can be messed with a lot more than the people because they're not so delicate. I usually just turn my strength up to like 55 and then click in areas just to bring out the contrast more. So for example, let's do the right wall here. Can go up pretty big here and just click and bam, just makes it look awesome. Bam. Cool. Ground a little bit. That might be too much. Bring it down to 10. Or 11 rather. 44. 33. Cool. Alright, and that looks good. And you want to check, you can add that layer mask back on, make sure nothing is too much. And I actually think I might have just done a little bit too much on these shadows. They're dark. I don't want them pitch black. 32%. Perfect. Cool. That looks good. And you can see the difference here if I change it to luminosity. It's just a tad bit different. Nothing too crazy. It's not as bad as the highlights. But I'm just going to keep it on normal, I think. I like that look a little bit better for this. And actually I need to do it more on the tattoos. I totally forgot about that. Tattoos are the best. They really pop after you burn them. There we go. And that might change my opinion on whether or not it's set to luminosity. Might have to switch it up because that might be too bright. Guess we'll see. Cool. Let's see how that looks with luminosity. Yeah, that's better. We'll go with luminosity. Cool. And that's pretty much it for dodging and burning. So if you just want to see the two of those real quick, before, after, switch it up a bunch slowly, all by hand, but the more you do this, the more you'll get the hang of it, and the better it'll come across in the end. So, yeah. Actually, that area looks too dark. Brush. Go. Brighten it up. Perfect. Awesome. Yeah, save your image again, and we'll be ready for the next step. Alright, so long story short, I lost my image. Last time I saved, my Photoshop quit, so I had to redo the dodge and burn layers. And that's why this image might look a little bit different than what we left off with since then. And my bad. I don't know anything else to do, so I just redid it, and hopefully this looks pretty close. But we'll get on to the next step, and our next step is another mask contrast. And it's just something to add a little bit more contrast to any areas that aren't contrasty enough. So just merge everything onto a new layer. And then set the blend mode to soft light. Add a hide all mask, and you do that by holding down options and then clicking the layer mask. So it's actually going to get rid of everything. And then add a vibrance layer to that. Subtract 50-ish. Cool. Merge it down. Clip it, to the layer we just made. You can name this one Mask Contrast 2. Alright, now you go click your layer mask and get the white brush and make it pretty soft. And maybe set it at like 33%. And you want to go in and paint anywhere you want more contrast. So this wall, the ground, things like that. And you can use your masks as well. So always feel free to go back to these and click them. Cool. And yeah, just anywhere you feel like needs more contrast, the walls, things like that. I wouldn't suggest doing it on their face so much because it's just going to get a little too wild. Maybe a little bit, like 10% or something. And then you can just do something like this. Do that. Select the subjects. Go back to layers. Just click once. Or maybe twice. And it'll add a little bit more contrast to them. Nothing too wild. But something. Yeah, just adding some contrast to the image. It doesn't look like it did much when you just look at the single step, but if you turn it on and off here, you can see it added a little bit of contrast to everything. And if you want to go ahead and group those together, mask contrast 2, and then add a mask to that, and you can get rid of anything you don't want then pretty easily. Just go back in with the black brush and, paint it out. Hopefully by now you're getting the hang of it a little bit. If not, no worries. But maybe watch the DVD a few more times. I don't want it dark down here. I want it to stay bright. There we go. Cool. Yeah, that looks good to me. Awesome. Alright, so yeah, save your image again, and then merge everything onto a new layer. Alright, so this last step here for the image is called thin sharpen. And thin sharpen is basically it's like the opposite of thick sharpen. Thick sharpen is for the bold lines. Thin sharpen is more for the skinny lines, like tattoos, hair, faces, things like that. And yeah, it's a lot of grunt work, a lot of steps. So I suggest you put it in an action maybe the first time you do it, so you don't have to ever do it again. There's no reason to go through the motions more than once. But I could show you real quick. If I play my action, this is how long it takes, and it runs through a lot of steps. Let's see. There are probably like 10 steps. Just press play after selecting the channel, and if my computer wasn't going so slow, this would go faster. But go. There we go. Yeah, before, after. You can see it sharpened a little bit. It's hard to see until we zoom in, but I'll show you after we do it ourselves. So anyway, yeah, merge onto a new layer. Actually, don't have to rename it yet. And then go to your channels. Just get rid of these. Go to your channels and select the red channel, and then duplicate it. You just drag it to this new layer icon right here. And then after you've duplicated it, it should automatically select it for you, and then you want to adjust the levels on it. You want to change the numbers to 32 and then 194, and just leave the middle one alone. That's the gamma. You don't need to touch that. Press OK. Then go to Filter, Stylize, find edges. And after you do that, you want to invert it. Then go to Filter, Other, Maximum at 1 pixel. Then go to Filter, Noise, Median at 1 pixel. Then go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. I don't know how to say that word. I don't think anybody does. At 2 pixels. And then hold down Command, click on the icon here so it selects it. Go to Image, Adjustments, Shadow Highlights, and fill it in like so. 100, 72, 116, 0, 50, 30, and 20. Press OK. And now turn on all these channels. And this is important. Turn off this channel. And then select this one right here. Just click like that. So it highlights all 4 of those. Go back to Layers. Then go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. It should set it to 86 and 1.3 and 0. Press OK. Deselect. Then zoom in and you can see what exactly this did. And it's a pretty harsh filter. It can be a little much right off the bat here. I usually take it down to about 50% and go from there. So then add a layer mask. And go through anywhere that seems like a little bit too sharp. For example, Jeremy's arm here might be a little bit too much. And I have a black brush set at 33%. Just paint it off. Or anywhere that's like getting a little too noisy or doesn't really need to be sharpened and you think might have. The filter is designed to not sharpen like the skin and stuff so that it doesn't look all crusty and brittle. But it's not perfect. So you still have to go in and edit it yourself a little bit. It's not too bad. Yeah, it's just a little touch, a little something. I usually don't do too much unsharp mask and stuff. Just try to limit it to these two sharpens. Before and after, you could see a little difference. Just makes it a little more sharp, a little more crisp, just a little nicer. Just little things, you know. So after you're done with that, just name the layer, thin sharpen, and then I would group all these last layers together. It's a lot of work, so just call it lots of work. Lots of work. And then after you're done with that, that's pretty much all the adjustments as far as not color adjustments and such for the image that we're going to do. So you can see a little before and after here. Before, after. We did a lot of work, but I think it looks awesome. I think it looks good. And even if you don't like how this looks exactly, at least you have the skills and you can use those techniques to apply them to your own images. And I just have a few more finishing steps to throw on here. Go ahead and save your image before we do that. Alright, so last steps here, finishing it off. Merge everything onto a new layer. And I guess this last layer, think of it as another spot editing layer, just like the final touch-ups. So go in and you want to spot edit out anything you may have missed first time around. For example, this go in. Here we go. This thing right on Neil's head here. You can Photoshop that out. Things like that might have come across a little different than you thought they would and don't look so good anymore. Or like if you see a piece of sensor dust that you might have missed. Anything along those lines. Actually, I think if we use the channel, let's see if it's correctly. There we go. Let's get rid of that. That looks good. Works for me. Little tint right there. Just simple things like that might need to be edited that you might have missed. If you see anything else you want to get rid of. In all honesty, I don't see much. It looks pretty good to me. So that's all I'm going to do for it. But if you see anything else you want to edit out, feel free. And then lastly, I add all the color adjustment layers on top. So first, let's figure out this sky, because right now it's pretty washed out, and I don't want it washed out. So we'll add, let's go with a channel mixer. Those are always good. So do a channel mixer. And then the settings actually already figured out. And I figured them out just by playing around with it. So, I mean, feel free to play around with it, but this is what I did. I did 85. And blue. And that did it for that, but I just want that on the sky, so where are you at, sky? Perfect. Awesome. So there, right on the sky, simple as that. And then let's add a little bit more contrast to that as well. So we'll go here, go back, curves, clip it right onto here, and then first point will be and I figured these out again just by trial and error, but I just want to make it so it's accurate to the final edit, so I'm using the numbers I already had. There we go. And we'll leave that like that for now. I might come back to it here, but we'll move on. And then I'm going to go ahead and add a color balance layer. And I don't want this to clip to anything. All right, good. And my settings were as followed. -5, 5, and 11. And for midtones, -19. And these things you just have to learn just by trial and error and just repeatedly doing it over and over until you get the hang of what really does what. I'm sure there's a math behind it, but it's probably boring and I don't really want to learn it. So just trial and error is the fun stuff. And let's set the opacity to like 60% to tone down that effect a little bit. And that sky got a little bit too bright. Let's add a vibrance adjustment layer to that. See, all right, perfect, clipped. Do -20 or so. There we go. That looks good. Maybe a little bit more. Perfect. And that's pretty much it in all honesty. I usually group these last layers and just call them like adjustments or something. Just to keep it even more organized. But it's your call because we're pretty much done actually. And yeah, so these final adjustments, just show what those did. Yeah, that sky in there. See final on and off. See exactly what it added. And yeah, overall, I think it looks pretty cool. I mean, if you don't like it, switch it up, do your thing. But hopefully you get the gist of it. You know, it's always fun to go back in and turn them on layer by layer. Let's see if we can do that real quick. But yeah, just remember you want to start off with that nice solid flat image like we have here. And then gradually, you know, spot edit, brighten stuff up. And then after you have everything perfect, you start adding in that contrast. And then sharpen it, dodge it, burn it. Forgot to call that burn. Burn. Some contrast in there. Sharpen. Final touch-ups. And lastly, the color correction. Cool. And that pretty much does it for the editing process. I hope that helped you out and it wasn't too fast or anything. Save your image and that's that.